Grand rise. Today we are going to be taking a request from Mary to focus the class on lower backs. And I apologize, it's just taking me another minute or so to get set up here, as Brandon had just finished filming some stuff for another project. So if you're here watching us live, click like, put some comments below, make sure you can hear me on the microphone. Definitely, again, making sure that you have space, a yoga block, or a small ball, squishy ball, maybe a dog toy, kid's toy, and then I think that's going to be it today. Try to make it simple, but also very effective. So the interesting thing about when somebody makes a request for the lower back, I definitely want to, I think, address a little bit of just some anatomy stuff so that we have a good understanding of what we're kind of going after, what we're talking about. Especially with a lot of our golfers, what can happen is that the lumbar spine, the lower back, right? Lumbar, and then there's also your sacrum area, which is kind of a part of that, sometimes gets coupled together, is much like a hinge joint, as they describe it. Okay, so it only goes through what's called this flexion and extension. It really only moves front to back. It doesn't rotate. Your thoracic spine, your T-spine, that does rotate, and parts of your cervical spine, it rotates a little bit more globally. So especially when golf or even just any rotational-based sport, which is a lot of them, tennis, and anything that involves usually a ball and a bat or a racket and a ball, something like that, you're going to have rotation. Rotation and separation. And so the lumbar does not rotate. So what can happen is that people can they create torque. And they're asking the lumbar perhaps to do what should be the role of the thoracic spine and or the hips, because we talked about last week the hips being rotators. They internally and externally rotate, and they kind of move also independently. So I think more often than not, what you'll commonly see is that somebody's going to complain of having tension in the lumbar, which is in the way of a concentric orientation. So if you kind of look at like the wrinkling of my shirt here, or the way I'm showing you my back, it's basically a shortening or a closing off of that hinge joint on the backside, if you think about it. So a lot of people are looking for lengthening through the lumbar, so they want those muscle tissues to elongate. That's why you tend to see people wanting to kind of forward fold, reach for their toes, maybe get into a child's pose to help elongate and stretch those muscles out. And that's, again, those are valid, natural. I think a lot of people intrinsically do know how to move in a direction that kind of unwinds and tries to downregulate tension. The other thing that we want to maybe address is if you have pain though with your lumbar spine, if you actually have like some sort of nerve thing going on, sciatica is fairly common, more common than you would know. I've had many clients over the years that have had a history of sciatica pain or something, whether that's the right or the left. And basically that impingement on the nerve there where it's getting trapped, a lot of times going into that flexion-based position isn't necessarily going to feel good. But regardless of what's causing it, two things we're really going to focus heavily on today. Number one is breathing. And if you know anything about Premier Fitness Systems, we understand the importance of how breath plays into movement and mobility. Your breath is the connection to the nervous system, which is kind of maybe your control center, if you will, okay? And then based on where you're at with your nervous system, that plays into your movement bandwidth, your movement capacity, or what you can do. So there's going to be a focus on breath, but also because we are talking about core, your diaphragm, which is a muscle that you can't see in the mirror because it's inside, is located in that major core area, if you will, or what I always refer to as, again, your center of mass, center of gravity, okay? And your diaphragm, it plays a role with your nervous system, but it's also a postural stability muscle as well, too. And then the other part is just, in general, what are things that we can do to strengthen the areas that surround the lumbar so that we can mitigate or downregulate potential for tension, tightness, or issues. Don't forget, whatever you do most often, you look at your day and see what you're mostly doing. If you're sitting a lot, that's going to contribute to issues. That's why we always try to challenge people to move as much as you can, as frequently as you can. And you can even incorporate what's called movement snacks into your day-to-day movements. Just getting up from your chair, from your desk, moving your laptop down to the ground, maybe you lay on your stomach, something like that. You're just trying to orientate yourself in different positions all day long so that perhaps you can mitigate the long-term effects of sitting and being in a chair. So, as I mentioned before, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is where you're going to want your yoga mat. And if you don't have a yoga mat, remember you can roll up a beach towel or a throw blanket. Actually works quite well. So let me grab mine. And let's bring you guys down to my level. We're going to be starting off on the belly. I have these are two very, very thin, but I have it rolled up into this little Tootsie Roll. So again, if you have your blanket or whatever else you're using, it doesn't have to be quite as thick. So I'm going to open this one up just a little bit, also that way I have something to lay on. Okay? So with this rolled mat, rolled blanket, whatever you're using, this is exactly where you want your navel to be. So I'm going to lay on my belly, on the front side of my body, and rest my navel right on that Tootsie Roll or cylindrical object. I can start here with my elbows underneath my forearms. That's a good, what I would maybe consider beginner level, or if already in that position, you're starting to feel a little discomfort, perhaps a little tension on your abdomen or your organs. Number one, that's common and that's okay. The goal is to start just closing your eyes and allowing your awareness to come to your breath. And with each exhale, you try to release the tension that you feel or let go of the discomfort. The next variation, or as you start to get a little bit more maybe loosened up is a good word, you can start bringing your forehead down towards your hands, stack two hands, one on top of the other. And we'll continue to breathe in this position. This is called crocodile breathing. As you breathe in, again, keeping your eyes closed, breathing slow and long through the nose. Notice how when you take that nasal breath in, can you feel your belly expand against the cylindrical object? And as you exhale, feel the cylindrical object kind of pull or push back into you. As you breathe in, can you feel a stretch or a filling up of the lower back area? Breathing in through your nose, keeping the tongue pressed to the roof of the mouth. What I really want you to focus on for the next minute is really trying to elongate your exhales. Now I'm doing an open mouth, soft jaw exhale, and that's totally fine. You're certainly welcome to do that. And you can also just keep your mouth closed and exhale out of your nose. we're trying to elongate our exhales. That way the diaphragm has the potential to move through its full range of motion. The full range of motion. Your diaphragm attaches to organs and as well as bones that are all located in your core. So let's take and through. Notice how you expand not only in the belly but the lower back. I want you to hold your breath in. We're going to hold that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. We're going to take another breath in. Feel that expansion, right? Filling up like a vessel. What I want you to do is as you go through your exhale, do You're not going to be able to breathe for very long or exhale for very long, so we're going to take another breath in. Keep that expansion, keep the tension. You're creating what's called a bracing or a contraction of the abdominal wall. Little breath out, little breath in, little breath out, and then release. I'm going to slide this object out from underneath. Actually, I'm going to put this underneath my forearms. Good morning, Samantha. Today's focus again is on lower back, strong core. Wish we had more than an hour because I could do so much with you guys. So we're going to stay down in this what's called a prone position, so this facing down. What I want to do now is try to use that sensory feedback that I just had with the rolled up mat or blanket. I want to feel like I can pull my ribs from the ground. So you see, instead of having such a huge arch through my spine, I'm going to pull back and point my sternum towards the floor. That's going to start bringing some of my waistline from the ground. I'm going to squeeze my buttocks to lift my hips and press through the tops of my feet and legs. So we're getting set up into what's called a modified plank position. You can tuck your toes if that feels better, but for the most part, I'm on my slightly top of the thighs and knees. I'm on my forearms and my hands. If you look at me too, what I'm trying to create is a long, straight spine. Basically, if I could draw almost a quote-unquote straight line through the crown of my head, through my ears, down past the shoulders, through the middle of the rib cage, and out through the pelvis or the anus area. Okay, so long, straight, long. What we're trying to avoid is a position that looks like this, where the butt is sticking up into the air, and you're not squeezing the glutes are on stretch. But we also don't necessarily want to create so much of a rounding or hunching that we're flexing at the spine. Okay, let's go ahead and reset, relax. I don't know how I was able to talk through the whole minute. Forearm planks are excellent for working on core stabilization with the right intention and with looking at your alignment here, right? So we're going to do this again for a second set, okay? We're building heat by being in this position. So remember what I said. Think about pulling the sternum away from the ground by pressing firmly through the elbows and forearms. You want to scoop your tailbone under so my pocket of my jean pants start to drive underneath me down and wrapping towards the front. So what I say is your pubic bone is coming closer towards your belly button. And now we need to come back to that breathing. Let's breathe in through the nose. And short exhale. Small breath in through the nose and short exhale out. We're trying to create that isometric tensioning, that bracing on the abdominal wall. Well, I tell a lot of my clients and class members, if I came by and tried to punch you in the guts, what would you do? You better tension up there. Okay, go ahead and release. And we're going to do one more. So now we're going to go into a full forearm plank. A full forearm plank. So that's going to be from the feet and from the elbows, okay? And again, if you're just tuning in, just now checking us out, come down to the floor. Let's think about these cues here. Where do I want pressure and tension? So if I have my elbows underneath my shoulders, you can either go flat palms into the ground. I really like the pinky edge, blade edge of my hand into the floor, okay? Pull the sternum away by pressing into the arms. Pull the sternum away. Scoop the tailbone, squeeze the buttocks. Now we're going to tuck the toes and come into a full forearm plank. Bringing the feet closer together is going to probably create a little bit more difficulty for many people. Okay, you're squeezing the legs towards each other. You're still squeezing your buttocks like you're cracking a walnut in your butt crack. You're not sinking to the floor. You're pressing into the ground to fight against gravity. We have 5 more seconds. Some of you might feel better with wide legs, a wide base of support. 3, 2, 1, and then release. Now, we talked again about lower backs and how everybody can be a little bit different. Some people are going to feel a nice little stretch by doing an up dog or kind of this sphinx, low sphinx position by pressing this way. You're going to be creating a stretch sensation through the front. If you do have a history of sciatica, sometimes this is what's also known as the Mackenzie, and it actually helps to put the liquid or the jelly-like substance back into the disc. I personally am going to go for more or less a child's pose after doing a movement like that. It's going to feel pretty good. So isometric drills, so we just held those positions. Not only did we hold them so that you guys could hear my cues and try to hopefully refine, if you've ever done some of these movements before, hopefully this is a refining and improving them to make them more efficient and more effective. Isometric drills are really great in a rehabilitation setting. We want to be able to hold a position static or resist movement first before we start to get dynamic, okay? So we're going to flip it over now, and this is where, once again, the wall really becomes one of my favorite props of all time, okay? Now, if you don't have a wall near you today or wherever you're watching this from, that's okay. The goal is just a non-moving object that if you applied pressure into it, it wouldn't start actually escaping you or push you away. So if I use one of our soft boxes here, it would just start sliding on the turf. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a side view. So I think this is going to make the most sense. If you guys have been following me for a while, especially on Instagram, I'm Ultimate Lady Badass on Instagram since I started working at Premier Fitness Systems over 3 years ago. One of my favorite core exercises, or just in general, is a dead bug. And I had done a little video. Let's just all remember that nomenclature, the name of the exercise is so that it's easy to remember. That's not obviously the scientific name of what's going on here. This is a very good beginner level variation of this particular drill. Well, it is. Whoops, don't lay on the microphone. So I'm getting near the wall, okay? We're going to be on your back. Take my hat off so I can do this. The goal is going to be able to secure your palms into the wall. So my fingertips are pointing down towards the floor. For some people, depending on their wrist mobility or wrist capability, that might not be quite a good entry point. You can also have your fingertips point slightly out to the side, and that'll help secure the thumb all the way through the first finger and wraps around to that pinky edge side, okay? So just like your foot, we want good grounding contact through the hands. So securing the hands into the wall, I actually want to hug my elbows in just a little bit so that they're pointed more directly up, or so that the ulnar radius now starts to track in line with that wrist crease. So I would like to avoid having my elbows splay out. That actually starts to create some internal rotation, and for some individuals that may not feel very good on the shoulder. 9 times out of 10, it's going to feel better to squeeze in and what we call dialing. We have this really awesome adjective. We say dial. Imagine that you're dialing into the ground. You're creating this corkscrew or the spiral. I like to say, pretend like you're grabbing two grapefruits and you're going to wrap and squeeze them, okay? Or you're corkscrewing two light bulbs in to the ceiling, or you're turning on both faucets on the sink at the same time. So create that effect, and if you apply pressure, if I push into the wall, what happens is my rib cage goes down. I start to really compress and push through the mid-back. So take a breath in. I'm going to take a breath out. That'll help me internally rotate my ribs. Press into the wall. Now I'm going to bring my legs off, or my feet off the ground, okay? If I can get my tailbone to lift up just enough so I can slide my hand underneath my tailbone, I can hold here static, okay? Let's say that's 10 seconds. Reset, release. If I don't pull my tailbone off the ground, I'm not really going to be using that lower abdominal area, but for some individuals, just having their legs here, their feet not touching, can already be somewhat of a challenge. So know that that is totally kosher, and you can do that as well too. So we're going to create a little bit of dynamic movement with the legs. So again, what we're trying to do is keep the integrity of the canister. We're trying to keep the rib cage and the pelvis aligned and stacked. Think of a can of green beans, tomatoes, chickpeas, whatever your favorite thing is, okay? We want to keep that torso integrity. So hands into the wall, make sure you have a secure hand, kind of corkscrew, spiralizing the elbows in a little. Exhale drives the rib cage into internal rotation, sets the core. And then a little slight nasal breath in. I'm going to lift up, and now I'm going to kick out one leg. We're going to hold here for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back. Let's do the other side. Press into the wall. Press, press, press. A little bit of an inhale. Kick out. In 3, 2, and 1. So if you notice, again, my breathing there is short and sweet, okay? We don't need to be taking long, deep exhales. We also just don't want to be holding our breath. So the breath is a little bit more shallow, if you will, just enough to have a little bit of inhale, a little bit of oxygen to work with, and then still kicking out our CO2 by going through exhale. So this starts to become a dead bug, because what I'm going to do is now take my hands away from the wall. So the wall allowed me to create stabilization in the upper thoracic area. That's why I kept mentioning the ribs down, flat back. It helped you tap into utilizing your back stabilizer muscles, your lats, while the hips, or the legs, or the femurs in this case, moved separately of that stability, okay? So it's all about creating proximal stabilization. So now we want to get a feel for what happens when I don't have my hands touching anything. Oh, this is where you're going to want your yoga block. Sorry. Yoga blocks are awesome. They're really very great, easy price. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. Remember I said a ball. This is a little dodge ball that we've been buying. These actually work really great. They're squishy enough, but not too hard. I've also got this funny little cylindrical pillow for the neck. And that's why I said, too, I just need you to grab something that's not very heavy, unless you've got equipment at home. I mean, shoot, a kettlebell would be great here. What we're going to do is try to secure our elbow to the knee connection, okay? So remember, I had my hands on the wall before, like this, right? Pressing into the wall. So you can have your hands farther away. That actually, you can still do this movement with straight arms. I'm pressing into the wall. That just becomes a little bit harder. by having the elbows bent, it was very much like a forearm plank, which we just did preceding. So now what I'm going to do is connect my elbow to knee. So I'm using the block on its long ways. I mean, if I have a lot of mobility, I can turn the block so that it's thinner, so that there's less of it between the elbow and the knee. But the way we do this drill at the gym is you need to think about, if I came by and tried to push or grab this yoga block, I shouldn't be able to steal it from you, right? I shouldn't be able to push it away. I'm squeezing my elbow to my knee so much so that I'm creating that contraction or that tensioning through that front line on that side. So in this case, my right side. Okay? So let's hold here. 10. Oh, wait a second. We still want a slight tailbone lifting off the ground. Sometimes I'll say, imagine that your knees are going up towards the ceiling. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? Now we're going to work on extending this leg out and reaching this arm overhead. So I'll show you that on the other side. But I want you to stay on the same side you just were, okay? So the leg extends out long, so I go from a bent knee to an extended leg. And then my other arm reaches overhead. Now I'm still near the wall, so I'm going to use it anyway, touch it, and then slightly push into it. 10, 9, 8, squeeze here, squeeze the block. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, a little release. We're going to do a third set. So if you were just like me, I had my right elbow to right knee with my object in between, and then you would have reached your left arm and your left leg out. So we're going to stay on the same side. So just for the easy cueing in the camera, I'm going to stay on the same side. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get dynamic. So I'm going to reach overhead and kick my knee long, kick my foot long, and then I'm going to come back, try to get my elbow to touch my knee. So it's like there's an invisible block on that side. Squeeze, slight tailbone lift. Here we go. 5, 4, little inhale, little exhale. 3, little inhale, little exhale. 2, little inhale, little exhale, and 1. And release, okay? Whatever we do on one side, you betcha, we got to do it on the other side. Samantha, is that burning? Is anyone else core on fire? And by fire, usually you can tell there's a lot of blood flow to the area. People describe it as just feeling like they can't do another muscle contraction or just can't keep performing the movement. It's important to understand where your fatigue level is at, because in order for you to actually do another muscle contraction, to do the movement well, with quality, efficiency, you need what's called ATP. You cannot create ATP unless you actually take a break, stop muscle contracting, so stop the exercise, and allow the little, think of like the little battery, boop, 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 to build back up. Those of you who love to play games, right? And then when you're ready, about 30 seconds goes by, that little battery has been built back up, and then you're ready to do it. So, like I said, let's do everything on the other side. So I'm going to talk you through that one. So now my object is between the left thigh and the left elbow here, okay? So when I start, I want to start just like I kind of did on the wall, okay? Bent elbow, slight tailbone lift. Ribs should be down, shouldn't even have to cue that. Just the nature of this movement puts them into a good position. And then I'm going to reach out long and hold. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, squeeze, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reset. Now we're going to do 5 in a row. And remember, slight tailbone lift. All you're trying to do is extend the knee and reach the arm overhead. 1, 2. But really you're focused on squeezing this block and keeping the left elbow and the left thigh bone magnetized together. 1 more. Little break. Okay? One thing that, again, can be a common mistake or something that I see often is that when the person extends their knee, if you kind of look at the camera, my leg bone, for the most part, is more at a 45-degree angle. It's not 90 degrees from the ground. Okay, can you visualize that? So basically, my knee is actually pretty close to my heel bone on this other side in terms of the alignment. the lower I get with that leg, the more my leg bone becomes parallel with the ground, the harder it is for my front abdomen to help control what's called the eccentric movement. That's where you see as somebody gets lower to the ground, the lower back will start to rise up, or maybe they'll just, like I said, lose the ability to control that movement with their anterior core chain. And we're talking about low backs today. So that's what we don't want. So that's a beginner level position. I can start to go down a little bit lower if I want, okay? Scoot away from the wall. Now, the last part is going to be the true dead bug, meaning it looks like a dying bug on its back flailing around. If you've ever seen a beetle or any other bug, get stuck on their back, they're like, right? What it symbolizes, though, is my ability to move my opposite limbs. So right arm reaching kind of over the head, left leg extends, coming back to the starting point, left arm reaching, right leg extends, okay? I can do that either, again, I can pretend like I have those yoga blocks there, right? I can reach with the opposites, keep the elbows bent, come back, reach with the opposites, keep the elbows bent, come back. I can now we're going to go long arms, okay? So extend the elbow, reach the fingertips to the sky, kick out left, reach overhead right. Breath in, tailbone lifts off the ground. Just alternating, we're just going to do 2 more, so 1 more on each side. So right arm reach, left arm kick, left arm reach, right leg kick, okay? Now we can go into straight knees, straight elbows, so straight legs of both. So both are reaching. Here's where it gets really tough because now this was a longer lever. The leg is now a heavier object inside the hip socket and becomes more of a challenge for the front low abs, especially transverse abdominis, to work in conjunct with rectus abdominis and your obliques. Microphone wires going into my armpit. So again, just for visualization, exhale. That internally rotates the rib cage, gets me set up for success. I'm going to bring my fingertips reaching to the sky, lift the tailbone, point the toes towards the heavens. Take a little breath in. Extend. So left leg lowers, right arm reach. Other side, right leg lower, left arm reach. And again, we're going to do 3 all together on each side, so 2 more. Inhale as I initiate the movement. Exhale to finish and complete. Okay? When we don't necessarily have an object to ground us or hold on to, many people will start to move rather fast, too quick, complain of the exercise or drill not being much of a challenge. So they've started to use speed as not necessarily a good thing in this case. It's not about how fast you can go. These are stabilization exercises. We're working on proximal core stabilization. A lot of times the slower we go, the better neurological drive we're going to receive to the brain. So we call this an input to the system, right? If I was a computer programmer, I did this actually back in college. I had to learn a little bit of Java, and my dad does IT. So you normally would tell the computer, let's say you're designing a web page, you might say something like caret, which is the little V sign, less than or greater than, caret blue, or caret hashtag blue, or the pound sign. That would be an input into the software to tell it to turn the background of the web page blue. Now, if you didn't have that code typed out correctly, guess what? The background of your web page usually doesn't turn blue. You might be missing the caret, you might be missing the hashtag, maybe you spelled the word blue wrong, maybe you spelled it the French way, B-L-E-U. We want the input to the system to be that's efficient and effective so that the brain and the nervous system intake what's happening as a safe and good, and it'll let you do more and more and more of it, okay? I digress. So we're going to flip back over again to the all fours position. Now, it might feel good, just like we did before with that child's pose, to just move the vertebrae of the spine and allow yourself to actually create some mobilization. So cat-cow is really lovely here. Sometimes I even just like to sit onto my heels, do a little bit more movement, right? So this is extension, your cow, and then you have flexion, your cat. Extension, flexion. Okay, and then we're also going to do some rotation, so I'll show you that as well too. I talked about it last week as well. It's very good. You're considered a great athlete if you can create rigidity and stability super quick and then go right into mobility or motility, as it's called. Okay? So from all fours, we're going to do a little bit of thoracic rotation, spinal rotation here. Move back just a little bit. And then we're going to start working on, again, another great core stabilization drill. So what I want to do for this thoracic rotation is I really want, so you can either go toes tucked or top of the foot down. Your choice. I need you to figure out which one you feel the strongest. What I want to do is create a little bit, again, of a bracing now of my glutes and of my haunches. So a slight squeeze. Can you create some tension or rigidity in your butt? Hopefully so. Okay? Now what I want to do then is take my hands and bring them a little bit closer in. So I'm narrowing, bringing them more closer to the midline. Okay? So what I'm going to do is stay pressing firmly through the left to open up and spin my sternum to the right. I can reach up to the ceiling. Better yet, I think most of you, if you just put your hand on your lower back or on your sacrum area, which is at the top of your tail, butt crack, we're going to open the shoulder. This is thoracic rotation. What we're trying to avoid, this is why squeezing or creating a bracing or a contraction at the glutes is important. Remember I said in the very beginning, if you've been watching from the start, your lumbar does not go through the transverse plane. It doesn't rotate. It only flexes and extends. So in order to display true thoracic rotation, what's evidently true is if I place the yoga block on my back, I want you to squeeze your buttocks, get that tension through the lower legs. You could even think about pressing down through your shins, pressing in through your feet to create that tension. The yoga block should not tip off over here to that far side away from the camera. It shouldn't go that direction. That means I'm actually creating movement through my hips, or I'm trying to ask my lumbar to do some sort of torque or rotation. That is a false reading, that's inaccurate, and that's inefficient mechanics. So let's do this on the other side. If you have your block, your ball, or whatever, you can use it as what we call sensory feedback. So if you can't tell if you're doing it or not, if you don't know what it feels like, you don't know what your obliques feel like, so that's your side core muscles on both left and right, you may need a sensory feedback object. Okay? Slight squeezing of the buttocks, a little tensioning of the hamstrings, the back of the thighs here, underneath the butt. I'm going to press through that right arm into the ground to spin my torso open, so my sternum is going to face away from the camera, and I can reach up left, or I can place the left hand on the lower back on that object, kind of press into it, and open up a little bit further. It's going to be best to take some time, spend some time breathing here. Short breaths, in and out, in and out. And then reset. Are you sweating yet, Samantha? I'm a little perspiration because I'm talking, which requires a lot more energy. And we don't have the AC on just yet because we had the garage door open. Yay! We're going to move into now what's called a bird dog. So we've done dead bugs, now we're doing bird dogs. Woo-woo! All sorts of animals. Oh, and then we still got to do our beast as well, too. I forgot about that. So let's actually do beast. Quadruped hover, beast. I think in yoga they also call it a bear pose. I mean, these are similar. There's some subtle variations to it as well, but they're very similar. I like this drill a lot because it actually represents a lot of development, neurological development as a child. So those of you who have kids, Sam, maybe you remember this about your daughter. a baby has to learn how to get from their back to their belly. That's kind of the start of them. That's why you always get excited. Oh, he's rolling, she's rolling. So they learn to roll first, and then eventually when they can roll over to their belly, then they can start getting their hands underneath them, and they can start pressing up, and look around at the world and see what's going on and move that cervical head and eye and occipital nerve. Eventually they'll come to all fours, and then you get really excited. At first, you might notice your kids do a lot of like this rocking. They kind of look like they're ready to go somewhere. Maybe they're getting excited. This is the brain just sensing pressure through the hands and through the feet. So the pressure sensors are changing as they're shifting. Finally, they almost get to a point where they're going to crawl, or sometimes they work on trying to they strengthen their arms by starting eventually to get almost into that down dog position. So for beast or quadruped hover, we still want our hands underneath our shoulders, secure the hands into the ground. We're going to push the ground away. So I actually want to feel like I'm spreading my shoulder blades away from the middle of my spine. So I don't want to sink my chest to the ground. My shoulder blades should not be pinched together. I should be pressing firmly into the floor and creating a spreading. That actually gets my chest muscles very active. I don't want that huge anterior tilt or, again, that extension or cow posture. I want to find a little bit of a neutral or kind of a flat back, so just slightly scoop. Or, again, you can think about squeezing your buttocks and bracing. Toes are tucked underneath, and I'm going to hover the knees about 3 inches from the ground. And I'm just going to hold. Steady, stationary, get strong. I can go a little higher with the hips, push back. It's bare. It's going to be a little bit easier because now I have more of the weight into my legs. And in yoga and a lot of other body weight calisthenic-based practices, I can start to shift more forward into the hands, getting closer into a plank. Slowly shift back, find my bear quadruped hover. 3, 2, 1, release, okay? Now again, we don't have a lot of time to talk about, oh, what if my wrist hurt? I could understand that. We get a lot of people that complain of that. And that's typically, if you can't feel like you can press through the palm of the hand, right? So that, again, that first finger, thumb wrapping around the pinky edge to the first finger. If you can't secure that into the mat, the ground very well, that's going to put pressure into the wrist. You can think a little, like I have hypermobile fingers, so like almost like a double jointed or just excessive hyperextension at the fingers. That is the middle joint of the actual finger. So I think about having to actually kind of grab and bend into my first little tiny knuckle on my hand, and that actually helps me secure the major knuckles, okay, or the grip points when you're holding on to something. That's your grip point. Okay, so it's just like your feet. Where do we go from here? So why did I get so excited about this? We're going to move into a bird dog. And I think, again, being that Sam is a little advanced nowadays, I want to use the wall, so I'm going to stay near my non-moving object. We're going to perform what's called a bird dog. But I'm going to try to work you guys up to kind of take you from beginner level to more advanced variations. Hopefully I can still talk through everything. Because this is the idea is checkpoints along the way. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is efficiency and being effective. That way I don't create any lower back tension or discomfort. So from an all fours position, what I want to do is, just like we did when we had our hands at the wall before and you were on your back, the first thing I'm going to do is see about kicking my leg back. Just want to adjust. I want to kick my leg out. So now I only have 3 points of contact. I still need to be pressing into the ground, exhaling the ribs, into internal rotation, and I'm going to secure my foot into the wall or object, okay? Think about having some, what do you call it? Oh, the leveler, like if you're doing a home project, the level. You want it to be level here. For the most part, I want this to be level. I don't want my leg so high up on the wall that it creates a tilting and I'm dumping my weight over to the right. Or you don't want the other thing to happen where the weight is now getting dumped into the left side and actually coming out of that right side. So this idea of finding, once again, some point of neutral. Okay? This starts to activate the left glute in a concentric contraction, so you should be having your butt squeezing as you push firmly through your heel, big toe and pinky toe into the wall. You also want to create a slight bracing or tensioning on the other side, on that right side. Okay? Now, I can extend my right arm out to the side like a T. I can bring my right arm back down the side of my body, make a little fist, create some tension through the elbow. The true bird dog is going to be to reach the arm out, just like we did before on the other side. So think about it. It's a dead bug in reverse. The dead bug just flipped over and recover. Okay? So opposite limbs.